our nation, and it is doing severe damage to our society. I've already had two consult calls, and they were both women. They're each women, and each one had a daughter who was killed by fentanyl. So, uh, except for that, I haven't heard of any deaths. I know that there are deaths. Okay, watch Canada comply with whatever Trump is arguing, and you know he's going to want to turn on the energy spigot in order to make gasoline, diesel, um, and just gas supply, make it cheaper. He's going to want lower fuel and lower cost electricity. Okay, I learned a long time ago. I'm a self-taught economist, and I have a saying in my bio from a way back. I'm unencumbered by the limitations of economics credentials. Okay, there are two major factors for an economy to lower prices. It's interest rates and the cost of energy.
See,
And that's
Jim, see, you have the advantage. You didn't sit through Jeremy Siegel's class at Wharton. You didn't get nailed with that one. So,
no, I caught a little bit of him on CNBC, and I thought, well, he makes some sense, but when he talks about Keynesianism, that's just
he was my
cupola.
teacher back in 2004. That was when I was in business school, and I'm, going down there thinking just pay attention, try and learn something. And he's explaining how if the economy's weak, Fed comes along, and so right in line with a lot of the other stuff that you hear out there in Wall Street today. But
Well, the Keynesian line. And you know what's really tragic is that John Maynard Keynes did not believe in excessive debt. He believed in paying down debt during the expansion years, and we didn't because we believed in the forever war and the what do they call it, the social welfare net. So with social welfare net and war, we had a big deficit in good times. That's not what Keynes advocated. He didn't advocate big government either. Anyway, that is one name that's been bastardized and really butchered in the economic textbooks, and it's really quite sad. Keynes made a lot of good sense. Now, if your household move from macro to micro, which I do a lot when I make arguments, if you're a household and you're unemployed and you're undergoing worker training, and your kid is just graduated from college and he's still living at home and he's about ready to get a job too, you can go into debt a little bit, and then you get a job and your son gets a job and everything starts flowing and you pay off your debt in the next year and a half, and you're moving in a good gear. That's not the way the United States has treated debt. We went to war. I think, it's not a real mystery. We broke the gold standard because of the cost of the Vietnam War. And the Vietnam War happened before your time, before, when you were becoming, a young man, graduating in college and all that. I was in the 1971 draft lottery for Vietnam, 1971. I was 19. And I got a Pennsylvania 218 lottery number. They only went up to 160, and I'm out. I dropped my 1S deferment. I figured they'll never get to 218, those assholes, and they didn't. And I'm out. Okay, Vietnam almost got me. Okay, and I learned about Vietnam's Cambodia Triangle a lot earlier than most other people, because I knew people who went to Vietnam and came back and told me about it.
well,
Anyway, okay,
I
go ahead.
well, I can quite imagine what that was like. Although Jim, just perhaps bringing some of the things you said earlier back to, I'm hooked on gold and silver. What can I say?
No, me
But
too.
you were talking about some of the things that Keynes said, and also obviously touching on what Trump is doing now. I'm of the school of thought. I very much agree with what I hear Luke Roman say, that there's an order of operations. You can do Doge, but you need a devaluation of the dollar first. If you do the cuts and you lose that GDP, unfortunately, the way we're set up now, what is it, 23, 24% of GDP is coming from government spending. So it's like on one hand, yeah, let's cut fraudulent spending. I think everybody's on board with that, although the body's so weak and fragile now. So Luke talks a lot about how that can work, but the dollar has to be devalued lower. Obviously, we're hearing about a Fort Knox audit. Scott Besson had his comments of, I'm sure you heard of monetizing the assets on the U.S. balance sheet. He has since come out and said that he was not referring to gold when he said that. Maybe that's the case. Sometimes government officials say things that, until it happens. But
Yeah.
do you think that just the way it's being rolled out, or do you think this will work? From the Austrian school, there's a lot of concern that, gee, this is like on one hand, there's parts of this that are good, but that day of reckoning might be arriving sooner. So I'm sure the audience would love to hear about any of that.
Chris, we need multiple things, multiple factors at the same time in big change. Multiple factors. You can't just say, well, we need a cheaper dollar than Doge with all the budget cuts. That'll make everything fine. Now, we need foreign direct investment. We need more oil supply. We need lower price for gasoline, diesel, for the entire distribution chain. We need incentives for the supply chain to overcome the damage of the lockdown. The lockdown really harmed the supply chain. That's where we got a lot of price inflation. We need encouragement for the supply chain. We need foreign direct investment in the hundreds of billions per year with fast track. Fast track. We need to get to production within a year, even if it's just low grade production. We need to get it within a year. Of course, yes, we need a cheaper dollar, but it's going to be very difficult. I tell you, we're starting to get, in a very real way, my forecast from 2015, 16, and 17. The dollar's going to rise, then rise some more before it vanishes. They're going to have to reduce the dollar somehow, Chris, when everything is pushing it up.
Jim, can I share what I personally think is going to happen?
Sure.
I'm going to pull up a forecast. I don't think anyone can argue with this, but let's take a quick listen. What you're describing, it seems similar dynamics to.
Which means they need the rate hike and a rate cut. They need a rate hike and a rate cut.
Jim, that is one of my favorite moments of you. I send that to friends regularly, and it makes people smile. I think we need to turn these into ringtones, but it's like what you're describing is similar to what you said there, though.
What was the year of that, Chris?
This was just a couple months ago, superstar.
Well,
but it's like that's the position so much of this feels like it's in, where it's like, well, if we cut spending and raise it at the same time, then we'll be good.
Well, we need rate cut for stimulus, but I was just talking in a consult call with a client a few days ago, and she asked me, when you started the newsletter, how did you develop your clientele in the first year? And I said, I wrote a very interesting 3-part series with Gold Eagle, etc. That was before Kitco. Kitco got on board with my work in about 2007 or 6. But I wrote an article. It was called Ass Backward Economics, part 1, 2, and 3. Lower interest rates are not stimulative. They're not. They're not. Retirees have less spending. Insurance companies have less money, income. Pension companies have less income, and they all have big payouts. Why do you think we're getting a big rise in insurance costs for home protection for fire and hazard? Because of 10 years of low interest rates, not stimulative at all. Okay. We need to see higher interest rates to bring reality to the table regarding $37 trillion of U.S. government debt. The very tragic thing right now regarding U.S. government debt is that we don't know if it's 36 or 37 trillion, because next month it might go up another trillion.
Are we going to see a restructure on that during Trump's second term?
I'd like to get to the restructure after I talked about the more accurate accounting. I think we're going to get a verification of what the debt is, and it's going to be higher than what we think. I think we're going to have a restructure of the debt. I think we're going to probably see some kind of a gold revaluation. And it's not going to be, I really, honestly, there's a really good argument that it could be like 15 or 20,000 for gold. There's a good argument for that, but it's not going to touch more than a quarter of the debt. Okay. I have a firm belief based on a hint from an intel source, a military intel source. It's a really firm hint from a couple months ago that Trump is going to have a fumble on restructuring the debt and what do you call it? A reform of the dollar. He's going to have a fumble. He's going to be arrogant and he's going to think he has it all figured out. He's going to have a plan. He's going to fall on his face. And then we start stage 2. Well, that didn't work. What are we going to do now? Okay. You can't have a 30-year problem. It's actually 50 years. The first trillion was, right after at the end of my college days, 73. The first trillion was Vietnam, and it just ramped up. It's been doubling over every 8-year period now when we had those 8-year the narco presidents. Okay, I'd like to tell something. I'd like to say something. We're needing to recover now from 30 years of narcotics presidencies. Papa Bush, Clinton, Baby Bush, Obama, and the Biden show because he was dead. Biden was dead. Let's get over it. Biden was dead. What that guy was not Biden. It was some British actor. We have to get over 30 years of narcotics presidencies where they were in a hidden fashion installing communism in the United States. And we need to get past that, Chris, and it's not going to be a 1-year recovery for the debt that took 30 years to accumulate. It took more than 30 years to accumulate. Let me say something else. I got a little reminder to myself. I have no social network account that posts anything. I have no social network account that posts anything. So anyone who has a Jim Willie account, I know there are about 8 or 9 in Twitter and there are about 11 on YouTube. They can follow my work and that's fine. But if they pretend to be me, it's not me because I have no social network account that posts anything.
Jim, do you have any social network accounts?
I used to, but not anymore. No, I don't. I have none. I have not trusted Facebook from the start. I knew that Facebook was a stolen product, and let me just add on some ugliness to an ugly cake. Amazon, Google, Facebook, Netflix, they all got pumped up. Tesla also. They all got pumped up by narco money. They don't there's no justification for their $1 trillion or $2 trillion market caps. It is an infusion of narco money into the U.S. economy and into the U.S. financial markets in order to control technology, and you saw it with the censorship. All right, let's move on. I think there's going to be a revaluation for gold. And, if you double the gold price, you're basically saying the dollar is cut in half. But I like to look at it as a dichotomy. You got a financial value of the dollar and you've got a purchasing power of the dollar. The financial value of the dollar is very much determined by dumping treasury bonds and liquidating derivatives. And the reality in households for the value of the dollar is how much was my food bill for my family of 4 and a dog, because I know you like dogs. Dogs are not very expensive for dog food. It's amazing. When I was in college and I was eating Alpo dog food, I found it to be really cheap. No, I'm sorry. That was my neighbor. He was a cokehead. Chris, the dollar is a mystery. Most people haven't figured out the dollar. I've been misquoted many times in the last 3 years. Jim really thinks the dollar is going to crash. I never said that. No, I said the dollar will rise some more, and finally rise again before it vanishes, and it's going to rise like a supernova because of treasury bond dumping and derivative liquidation. Okay, you know, the Wall Street Journal did not properly report the 2021 and 2 event in Japan. They dumped $200 billion worth of treasury bonds, and their yen went down. They dumped treasury bonds and the dollar went up versus the yen. And they've never recovered since. And their solution, Chris, is to go to the gold standard. And right now they're facing assassinations. And I heard that a certain newsletter writer.
Whoa.